the news.
BP says it will be at least another week before they're able to siphon the oil off from a blown-out well a mile under the Gulf of Mexico. There are already signs that the natural habitat may be affected. This is one of 20 turtles washed up on the beach in Mississippi. The governor of Louisiana says the spill is threatening the way of life in his state. Mississippi, Alabama and Florida have also declared a state of emergency. Visiting the scene, President Barack Obama described it as an unprecedented environmental disaster.
BP is responsible for this leak. BP will be paying the bill.
Even if the well is shut off in a week, fishermen and wildlife experts are wondering how long it will take for the Gulf to recover.
Seafood, some of the greatest seafood in the world comes from Clackamas Parish, Louisiana.
Booms have been laid in an effort to contain the spill, but these have so far failed. It's estimated tens of millions of barrels of oil could leak from the undersea reserve. For those on shore, there is nothing to do but wait and hope.
The US government has suspended fishing for 10 days across a wide area of the Gulf of Mexico because of fears that seafood may become contaminated. Fishermen in Venice, the town that President Obama visited, have come back with what may be their last catch for some time. They fear for their livelihoods.
This is what our people live on. We have always fish, shrimp, trawling season, crab. Our seafood industry is major, and that has affected our industry tremendously.
It's just like Katrina, catastrophic. That's how I feel.
The whole end of the parish pretty much depends on getting on the water in some shape or form, you know, whether it's oysters, crabs, shrimp, charter fishing. So it could affect everybody, you know.
Some fishermen have signed up to work on BP's cleanup efforts, but fear for the long term. In 2008, commercial fishing in the Gulf of Mexico amounted to around 20% of total US production.
A catastrophic chain of events has been triggered after an explosion ripped through the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform on the 20th of April, killing 11 workers. The rig burned for 2 days before sinking off the southeast coast of Louisiana. The cause of the blast isn't yet clear, but could have been caused by a build-up of pressure inside the well located 1,500 meters below the sea's surface. A huge oil slick is now heading towards the coastline, prompting fears of an environmental disaster. The well, which is owned by BP, is currently leaking 5,000 barrels of crude oil a day into the Gulf of Mexico. It's led to inevitable comparisons with the 1989 Exxon Valdez spill, when a supertanker ran aground off Alaska. It leaked around 40,000 tons of oil in the worst US oil spill until now. History repeated itself in 2002 when the Prestige oil tanker sank off the Galician coast in Spain, spilling up to 64,000 tons into the Atlantic. US Interior Secretary Ken Salazar warned on Monday that it could be several months before a relief well is operational in the Gulf of Mexico.
The scenario is a very grave scenario. You're looking at potentially 90 days before you ultimately get to what is the ultimate solution here, and that's a relief well that's going to have to be drilled down 3.5 miles below the ocean floor. And by the time you drill that well down, a lot of oil could spread.
Tens of kilometers of floating boom have been laid to contain the oil slick, but are powerless to protect the region's delicate ecosystem.
The Greek people have reacted with a mix of resignation and outrage to a painful new government austerity package announced in exchange for an EU International Monetary Fund loan package. Higher taxes and more public sector job cuts, as well as a wage and pensions freeze, prompted newspaper headlines like "Suffocation" and "The Great Sacrifice." In Athens, this man said the cutbacks are another burden. He said, "I don't expect much. I'm completely despondent. I make jewellery and my phone hasn't rung. No orders in nearly a month. Every day we're losing money." Around Europe, there was a muted reaction in the financial markets to the unprecedented but widely expected bailout package. Brussels and the European Central Bank are now hoping that this will be enough to stop the erosion of confidence in the euro and other eurozone economies. Fund manager Alexandra Iatridis explained,
"The market was expecting pretty everything in this plan, so there was not positive or negative reaction to this announce. The only issue is, do we have a European debt problem with other countries that would maybe need help from European Union or IMF?"
The euro dropped in value against other currencies on concerns that the Greek government won't be able to implement the tough austerity measures that it has proposed. When Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou met the Greek President Karolos Papoulias to explain the so-called pain for aid deal, the President warned him it would be difficult to get popular support unless workers' suffering was accompanied by a crackdown on corruption. After that meeting, Papandreou insisted the new measures are vital for Greece's financial survival. He said there is an opportunity to make a better country, to make a new beginning, a more just, transparent, human, productive and competitive Greece. Under the deal announced at the weekend, Eurozone members and the IMF will lend Athens €110 billion over 3 years. It's the first rescue of a Eurozone member and by far the largest bailout for any country to date. Greece got further help from the European Central Bank, which says that it will accept all Greek government bonds as security for loans, even if their credit rating continues to fall. The move guarantees that Greek banks can continue to borrow money from the ECB at a cheaper rate. The austerity measures include abolishing Christmas, Easter and summer holiday bonuses for higher paid workers in the public sector and limiting them for lower earners. Value-added tax will rise to 23% and taxes on fuel, alcohol and tobacco will go up by 10%. Angry unions accuse the government of breaking a pledge not to impose any further cuts after previous austerity measures in March. The main public sector union said it will hold a 2-day strike this week instead of its previously planned 1-day walkout.
Germany's government has given the green light for the concerted rescue plan for Greece. The parliament in Berlin will vote on whether or not to approve at the end of this week. Public opinion among German voters is largely against paying to help Greece out of the hole. A regional election coming up on Sunday has influenced Chancellor Angela Merkel's stance on the aid plan. She says, "We will push for creation of a European ratings agency so that the European markets will be sturdier and better able to respond in line with our ideas on a social market economy." Merkel does not need the opposition Social Democrats' support to get parliamentary approval, but would prefer to have cross-party backing. Europe's biggest economy is to pay the largest share of any EU state, kicking in €22 billion, more than a quarter of the loans over 3 years. France has agreed to pitch in with €17 billion. French Economy Minister Christine Lagarde said the Euro country's message is clear: no to the attack on a country within the Eurozone. We in the Eurozone are sticking together in solidarity. When one member is in difficulty, we come to its support, and we ask it to take certain measures. If Greece defaults on the rescue package loans, the loss will be taken by the taxpayers in the Euro countries that have provided them.
Fighting for the future of jobs.
The main UK party leaders have been targeting key seats 3 days before what looks like being one of the closest elections for years. Opinion polls suggest no party may get an overall majority. Despite trailing in the surveys, Prime Minister Gordon Brown's Labour Party could still win the most seats in Parliament. David Cameron for the Conservatives has vowed to campaign through the night tomorrow, while Nick Clegg's Liberal Democrats have changed strategy, tackling areas they previously thought unwinnable. 2 opinion polls in today's papers each put the opposition Conservatives a few points ahead in terms of the number of votes cast, with the Lib Dems vying for second place with Labour, who've been in power for the last 13 years. Britain hasn't seen a hung parliament since 1974. It's become used to relatively strong governments able to impose their will in parliament thanks to sound majorities. The prospect of parties having to seek coalition partners brings fears of weak decision-making.
I don't think you can run a country on a committee basis, which it would be.
There's lots of points in each of the parties which I think would work for Britain. If they could work collectively, I don't know.
A hung parliament could unsettle markets who want decisive action to tackle the UK's large budget deficit, though so far they've been taking the threat in their stride.